Chapter 16. The one-sided argument lasts the majority of the trip up the never-ending stairwell. Rod remains silent and steadfast as the entity continues its pleas for him to turn around. At first it is calm and sincere, giving Rod friendly advice on why he shouldn't go.
"This is too dangerous, even for you. We will have our opportunity to strike, but not now. Too much is at stake."
The statements are vague and evasive. Rod wonders what was so dangerous as to detour himself or the darkness that attaches itself to him. The voice has spoken many times over the years about a journey they are on, a quest that would change Rod's fate, a change for the better, a way to end his suffering, an emotional pain that eludes him. He feels such agonizing guilt, but he did not know why. Every time he tries to remember the past, a physical pain wraps around his mind. His head would throb until all thought vanished from his mind. His dreams are even more clouded. When the Dark One exhausts all attempts with a calm demeanor, it shifts to a paradigm of fear.
"What will become of Elena if you die here? Yet another victim in this cold, unforgiving world. What would her grandfather say?"
For the tiniest of seconds, the dark voice pinched a nerve with the hunter. The question almost faltered his pace. Not this time, Rod thinks within himself. The tactic will not work this time. Rod rushes onward, ignoring the Dark One. The exhaustive climb up the eternal stairwell gives Rod plenty of time to think. In doing so, he pushes out the dark voice from his mind, nothing more than wind whistling through the cracked walls around him. He stops at a platform to catch his breath. He notices a rupture on the outer wall, generating a small blade of light. He walks over and peers through the crack. Daylight is not far off. If he's to catch this Sandman off guard, Rod must hurry. He breathes in the cool air several times, letting it fill his lungs before exhaling. He turns and stops at the set of steps leading up, listening for the dark voice. It's gone. Only his own thoughts fill his mind. He smiles as he continues up the steps. Only a small victory, but one he'll gladly take. Time creeps along as he continues the winding trek up. The new sound of silence is comforting, allowing time to mentally prepare himself for the task at hand. The top is a complete mystery to him. Being low on ammo and grenades could prove to be quite hazardous. There's no telling how many imps or thralls will be waiting. Reaching the final platform, Rod can see the door to the final floor of the skyscraper. Oddly, the door is carved from dark wood. It isn't old or withered. The door stands out like a sore thumb. Patterns and runes are intricately carved around the edge. In the middle is the face of a gargoyle. The knob to the door is resting in its mouth. He touches the handle. Smooth. Someone took great care in crafting this door. As he turns the knob, a heaviness weighs on his shoulders. The door glides open with a gust of wind so thick he could cut it with his sword. Whispers travel as the draft moves past. He peeks through the doorway into a dimly lit room. The room is dark and humid. Beads of sweat start to pool from his pores as he steps into the room. Shadowy tar covers the floor and walls. A mixture of yellow and green vomit oozes down the walls into puddles on the ground. Rod's boots sink in slightly with each step. Torches fastened to several tar-covered pillars ahead of him light his way forward. The pillars are evenly separated, possibly part of the structural beams of the building. Continuing on, he finds pods on the floor, a demonic garden of sorts. He walks over to one. Its outer shell is warm to the touch and smothered with the vomit-looking fluid that covers the walls. The pod convulses at his touch. Something is moving within. Rod pulls his sword out and makes a careful incision, starting from the top and moving downward. More of the yellowish liquid bubbles up from the cut, then oozes down the pod. The fedor of decay and sulfur cloud the area. Rod holds his breath and spreads the skin-like outer casing away. To his horror, a small fetus of an imp is curled in a ball. He's dumbfounded by this revelation. Demons can only possess an organic life form from this dimension. Only the most elder of demons can materialize without a conduit. A projection of themselves in this reality. Somehow, Sandman found a way to incubate demons in this reality. This isn't possible. Rod mulls through his memory of spiritual training. Nothing in any book or tome about growing demons. This fuels his curiosity even more. He stands up, leaving the creature in its open casing. Ahead of the hunter is a large elevated platform with a long rectangular window. Light exudes from the interior. The window is too high to peer into. He can make out shadows in the room. Must be someone walking back and forth. No doubt the Sandman. Quietly as possible, Rod wades through the pod form. As he makes his way closer to the structure, Rod hears music. To his right is a set of stairs leading up to the structure, torches illuminating the way. He does his best to keep to the shadows. An overpowering sensation is nudging him to look up. He does. At first, he isn't sure what he's looking at. The ceiling is over 20 feet high. It's dark, any detail is hard to discern. He stares longer in hopes of his eyes adjusting. A wave of movement cascades along the veiled ceiling. An object drops from above, falling near one of the torches on a column. The object opens its wings, then flies forward 15 or so feet, gliding back up to the ceiling. Holy fuck. There must be hundreds up there. Hiding in the darkness above him are hundreds, if not more, fleshling imps sleeping. The creatures are hanging upside down like bats. This is starting to turn into a bad idea, Rod mutters under his breath. No way would he be able to fight his way through all these imps if they were to awaken. And if he did confront the Sandman, all he would have to do is wake this imp army, outnumbering the hunter. He crouches down and scans the area. There must be something that he can use. Nothing. Just darkness. As he starts to contemplate his escape down the tower, a roar erupts ahead of him. The sound of a motor, then gray smoke passing through the flickering light of the closest torch. To his amazement, a generator. Judging from the sound, a gasoline generator. He looks over to the window, where the shadow is still moving back and forth in the room. He takes another glance up. The imps are used to the whirring noise of the engine. This gives Rod the perfect opportunity to move unabated. Leaping over the rails, he lands on the squishy ground and hastens over to the generator. Slowly moving his hands over the machine blindly, he searches for the fuel line. He fumbles around for several seconds before grasping the rubber tube. Rod keeps one hand on the gas line and traces it along to the back wall, following it to the left several more feet. He stops as his boot hits a metal surface. The sound of clang is masked by the roar of the generator. He rubs his hands around the metal container. Judging by the diameter of the cylinder, it closes to a 2,000-gallon drum. Rod continues searching the drum, combing for the release valve. This is taking too long, thinking to himself. He pulls out his sword and punctures the side of the barrel. Gasoline pours out and crashes onto the ground. Rod sheaths the sword and makes his way back to the stairs. Climbing up the rails, the hunter is back where he started, moving closer to the doorway of the structure. Music is resonating in his mind. The rhythmic whistling chills his bones as he crouches next to the doorway. He looks in for a quick inspection of the room. Straight ahead, a body lays strapped down on a wooden table. The wood is much like the door he entered, dark and old but not rotted. Runes are etched into the table, the same style of runes as on the floor. On the wall to the right, pin-ups of drawings of the human body. Another sketch next to it is an outline of a demon. Looks to be a blueprint of sorts, lines pointing to key parts of the body. To the left is a metal bench with tools. Some are soaking in a rusted pan. Chains rustling in the right-hand corner catches Rod's attention. He looks. Nothing. A figure moves in from the left corner. Rod pulls his head out of the doorway. The figure is singing along to the song, "What a Moment to Share." It's wonderful, wonderful, oh so wonderful, my love. Rod carefully peeks his head back in. The figure is standing over the body on the table, singing to it. The man is painting something on the body, but Rod can't make out what it is. The man is wearing a long brown trench coat. Tattoos on the back of his neck are sneaking past the collar. The figure stops and perks his head up. Rod retracts again. Slowing his breath, Rod uses the sounds of his surroundings to mentally see the room. The thud of the man's tarnished boots emits an echo as he walks across the wooden floor. The figure stands at the head of the body on the table. Rod can no longer detect the orientation of the figure. He takes a chance and peeks out again. Only looking briefly, he snaps back frantically, trying to process what he just saw. His eyes moving back and forth as if flipping through the pages of a book in his mind's eye. Still anxiously scanning through the library, Rod's eyes suddenly locked to the passage he was looking for. The dark sight, now etched into the fabric of his mind, is that of a wraith. This apparition intertwines around the trenchcoat figure as he stands, back toward the doorway. Black mist slithers around him, then forming into a hooded being. Small pieces of the mist-like cloak fall from the apparition, like little black water droplets, as it envelops him. The phantom's long, skeletal fingers stroke the figure's shoulders. Wraiths are a mystery with little to no written origin, thought to be made up of old wives' tales to frighten bad children. Rumor has it that a simple entry about wraiths is written in a book housed in the Great Library of Orgrimdir. It states that wraiths are beings trapped in limbo, an existence between reality and the ethereal plane. It does not abide by the divine laws of either reality, free to move between either reality but not able to exist within them. Like angels and demons, wraiths use humans and animals as puppets, controlling them for their purpose. This, of course, is only speculation, as no account of a wraith has ever been recorded. Hands clapping in the next room break Rod away from his inner thoughts. "Come on out, Hunter. No sense in hiding. Come out, Rod." Rod is taken aback by the remark. How did this individual know he is here, let alone his name? The figure speaks up again to the confused Hunter. "I'm pretty sure you're surprised that I know you. The great hunter No-Leaf Clover. What's the saying again? Ah, that's right. When the no-leaf clover comes for you, your luck's run out." He chuckles briefly. Charming. No sense in standing in the dark now. Rod walks into the doorway, his hands close to his weapons but not drawn. He doesn't want this to escalate just yet. There's information that he needs from this man. The torchlight reveals the figure to Rod, his arms crossed, smiling at the hunter with wicked delight. "Welcome to my home. If I knew you were coming, I would have straightened up a bit." Rod stares back with no reply. "What? Cat got your tongue, huh?" They lock eyes for what seems like an eternity, each man sizing the other up, devising a plan for each other's reaction like a chess match. Rod chooses his options and speaks. "How'd you do it?" "Do what?" Sandman retorts. His eyes light up as he walks over to the window. He scratches his buzzed head, then points out to the garden of pods. "Oh, you mean that?" Rod stands silent. "Quite simple, really. You just need the right materials, and the right teacher, of course." Rod tracks Sandman's eyes over to a small table by the drawings pinned to the wall. An old leather-bound book lays quietly. Their eyes connect again. Rod breaks the silence. "I've never seen a possession last so long without killing the host, totally transforming it into a demon." "I know. Beautiful, isn't it? I've spent many years perfecting this process. It really became my life's work." Sandman walks over to the workbench with a cocky strut. He puts his hand in an old iron bucket and pulls out a piece of blood-soaked meat. No telling who or what the meat belonged to. He shows it to Rod, then tosses it in the corner. A small, gangly creature darts from the dark corner, snatching the meat. Rod is astonished by the sight. He keeps the expression inward, masking it from Sandman. The withered being gnawing on the brownish meat is a small child that is in its infancy of possession. His face is normal except for the bulging black eyes. The child stops for a moment and looks up at Rod, blinking several times with its bulging black eyes. Any sign of this child's soul is lost in those dark eyes. The boy seems to sulk from his predicament before chewing on the meat once more like a wild beast. The bottom row of teeth is missing. The beginning stages of hair loss are occurring. The only clothing on his frail body is a brown loincloth covering his genitals. Rod steps in the direction of the child, which frightens the creature. It scurries back into the shadows, stopping Rod from further advancement. He questions Sandman with a growl in his tone. "What gives you the right to play some demented god?" "Well, I did." He callously laughs off the question. "These people had no purpose, living day to day in this forsaken wasteland. I gave them purpose, a chance to be something beautiful, a vessel for the other side. They are my children, and I their father." "They will turn on you. Demons won't bow to a human." "Again, you just gotta have the know-how." "The runes," Rod mutters at his own revelation. Runes, an ancient alphabet describing the true word of all things. Speaking or writing these letters allows the user to tap into the ether of the world, neutral energy that can be manipulated by the speaker, allowing them to alter the energy how they see fit. But what Rod is witnessing is far outside his knowledge, or anyone else he knows. The book, Rod thinks as his eyes slice back to the leather-bound book. Sandman follows Rod's eyes. He smiles when the hunter makes the connection. "Now I think it's time to bid our farewells." Sandman claps his hands in the air. Two hounds step into the doorway behind their master, with another at Rod's flank. All three beasts are in different stages of rigor mortis, with various sections of bone and muscle showing. They advance sluggishly toward the hunter, growling and slobbering black tar. This thick mucus is another sign of possession. the body fighting back this ethereal disease and losing. These beasts were long dead before the possession ritual was complete, leaving the demon imprisoned in a decaying body. A zombie dog, as it were. Sandman coyly smiles, then instructs the undead beasts. Attack. Rod goes for the zombie hound at his flank first. Drawing his sword, the hunter cuts the head off, pivoting back to the other hounds. He flips his sword to his left hand and pulls out his 1911, firing 2 shots at one of the hounds. One bullet penetrates the jaw, shattering it. The other bullet drills through the temple. The final hound leaps at Rod, missing the lunge. The hunter riposts by swinging his blade upward, cutting the beast in half. Rod makes quick work of the hounds, but it is merely a diversion for Sandman. A short sword extends out from each sleeve of his trench coat. He dashes in and unleashes a flurry of sword swings. The hunter blocks several of the attacks, but loses his footing and falls. The mutated child plunges from the shadows and latches onto Rod's back. The pale youth sinks its remaining teeth into the hunter's right shoulder. Luckily, his leather jacket is sufficient defense. Sandman darts in with a thrust. Rod dodges to the left, and the sword pierces the child creature in the face. Rod rolls and hastens back to his feet, going on the offensive. With each swing, Sandman parries Rod's incoming attacks. The hunter increases the speed of each attack. Sandman starts losing sight of the flurry, giving Rod the opportunity to knock one of the swords out of Sandman's hand. Rod sidesteps, connecting with a cross to Sandman's face, knocking him to the ground. The occultist grabs a handful of dirt from a small pail and flings it into Rod's eyes. With the upper hand, Sandman charges the blinded hunter. He lowers his shoulders and connects into Rod. The momentum knocks him backward and out the window, smashing into the ground. He stumbles to his feet, ignoring the sharp pain reverberating through his spine. Rod does his best to remove the remaining dirt in his eyes. His eyes tear up to help the process. His vision starts to return. Rod looks up to find Sandman crashing down on top of him. Rod falls back into the earth with Sandman straddling him, both swords extended overhead. Sandman begins to plunge them at the hunter, only to be met by a fist to the chest. Sandman flies backward, but finds his footing. He spouts out several ancient words which echo through the room. This rouses the imps from their slumber. The tiny creatures drop from above, circling the 2 men in a wall. Rod gets to his feet in a dead stare with his adversary. Sandman twirls his swords in 2 full rotations, then sprints to Rod. The hunter readies his sword and sprints to Sandman. The 2 clash weapons, exchanging swings, parries, and thrusts. The men are evenly matched. Rod has the faintest feeling he's seen this style before. He only knows one man that can wield 2 swords so effectively. The imps continue to circle around the 2 men as they battle in the pod garden. Rod again increases his speed, giving him the advantage over Sandman. Sandman is able to block Rod's last swing and lock his sword between Sandman's dual short swords. Your speed is uncanny. How is this possible? Do you have demon blood in you? Rod pulls back, breaking Sandman's lock. The men pause, each taking rapid breaths, staring into one another. The hunter does not answer the question. There are many years of his life he cannot account for, nothing more than hazy visions and nightmares that vanish at first light. You must let me have a supply, Sandman continues with a smug smirk. Rod grits his teeth and goes back on the offensive. Taking Sandman by surprise, he knocks one sword from his hand, then punches him in the gut. The buzz-headed villain doubles over, but Rod furiously clutches the occultist by the neck. He knocks the other sword from Sandman's hand. The hunter squeezes, pulling him closer. Where'd you get the book? Sandman coughs, trying to catch a breath. Rod loosens his grasp, only enough to receive an answer to his question. You're asking the wrong question. He grins at Rod. Angered by his egocentric smile, the hunter flings him to the ground. The tattooed narcissist takes quick breaths, then fights to his feet. He darts at Rod. Anticipating the move, the hunter sheaths his sword. He's not sure why either. The urge for more answers from Sandman far outweighs the drive to kill him. Rod instead charges at Sandman. Rod lowers his shoulders and spears Sandman. The force of the impact knocks him flat on his back. Rod straddles him, pulls his 1911, and points it at his temple. "How do you know my name?"
Now you're getting warmer. Don't get too carried away. You might open up Pandora's box."
Sandman mutters another incantation from the dead and ancient language. Again it echoes throughout the room. Several imps break away from their circling pattern, making a beeline straight for the hunter. Grasping his shoulders, they pull Rod off of Sandman and hurl him back. Sandman gets up, wiping the filth from his coat. He looks over at Rod, who is also getting back to his feet, speaking once more to his imp army. The demons descend upon Rod like a winged plague from all directions. He unsheaths his sword, then proceeds to mow down the onslaught of tiny demons. The distraction gives the occultist a new opportunity. He takes off his trench coat, revealing his upper body, which is covered in tattoos. Old runic symbols, drawings of creatures, and ancient letters are strategically placed everywhere. Dropping to his knees, the shirtless man murmurs in a demonic tone. With each chant, he places his hands and arms across each other. The ritual connects specific runes and letters to others scattered around his body. With each precise connection, the outline of the tattoos glows white. Rod is too busy with the imp offensive to notice. As the ritual nears completion, the scarred cultist moans in pain as the ink from his back tears off in a black mist, swirling outward and increasing in volume. The whirling ink mist starts to take form. Rod pulls his gun and fires shots off to bring down the imps. The flurry of imps diminishes, giving the hunter a chance to view the forming ink cloud. The dark mist swirls to the ground as two large paws materialize. The paws are liquid at first, but quickly solidify. Each piece of the beast starts to appear before Rod's eyes. The legs and shoulders are full of thick, dark hair. The head comes into view. The canine face with dark crimson eyes and blood-stained teeth. The hunter is in awe of its towering size. His amazement changes to fright when two more heads form on either side of the first.
"Well, of course. Only my damn luck," Rod says, astonished.
This beast towers almost 20 feet high. As the demonic hound phases completely into this reality, the middle head lets out a blood-curdling howl. The left and right heads snap at the imps flying by. Rod moves to his right, masking himself behind a pillar. Sandman staggers to his feet. The summoning ritual takes a heavy toll on his body. He grabs the trench coat, slips it back on, then looks in Rod's vicinity.
"We were always destined to meet, Hunter. It just wasn't meant to be so soon. Fate, however, decided differently."
He proceeds to the stairs while still speaking out to Rod.
"I have another surprise for you next we meet, if you can make it out of here. Cerberus, attack."
Sandman vanishes into the shadows, leaving Rod with the Cerberus and imps to contend with. The hunter peeks out behind the pillar, investigating the three-headed obstacle. Two heads playing with the imps, while the middle sniffs the air. The beast lowers its head, smelling the ground, trying to pick up the scent of its prey. This is quite the pickle Rod is in. A lightning bolt of epiphany strikes the synapses of his brain. The gasoline. He leans back out, looking ahead at his 10 o'clock. The hind paw of the Cerberus is stepping in the puddle of petrol. Rod reaches for his Zippo. Taking one last look at it, He flips the top and moves his thumb over the flint wheel. A small blue and yellow flame sparks from the eyelet. He turns, gauges the distance, and chucks it at the flammable pool. The lighter is intercepted by an imp. The demon stops in mid-flight, looking at it in bewilderment. Another demon whips by, snatching the Zippo. 2 more give chase to the imp thief. Unfortunately, the imps fly too close to Cerberus, revealing Rod's scent from the lighter. All 6 ears point back, each nostril sniffing in unison. Shit, the hunter sighs. The imps continue their chase, each one attacking the other for the lighter. The original imp is able to sneak in and snatch it back, while the other 3 kill one another. The creature thumbs the Zippo, sniffs it a couple of times, then relights it. The imp is mesmerized by the small yellow flame. Transfixed upon the dancing flicker, the creature moves its index finger into the flame before yanking it out in pain from the lighter's hot kiss. Angered by the lighter's deliberate actions against it, the creature throws it to the ground. Though paying no mind, it is hovering right over the puddle of gasoline. The Zippo taps the combustible fluid, igniting. A massive wall of fire roars into the air, frying the unsuspecting imps in the vicinity and sending them soaring in multiple directions like balls of fire. One dives into the back of Cerberus. It yelps loudly in pain. The fire spreads along the gasoline trail, finding its way back to the generator. The blaze sucks into the crack of the drum, exploding. The corner wall rips apart, sending fiery debris in all directions. The explosion knocks the 3-headed hound off its feet, crashing into one of the steel columns. Rod hastens to the stairs to pursue Sandman. The heat from the fire causes the inside of the pods to boil. Once the membrane can't take any more, the pods explode into a greenish goo, firing off in rapid succession as Rod runs past. The remaining imps are burned alive or ripped to shreds from the explosion. Cerberus is dazed and confused by its collision with the pillar, giving Rod the opportunity to reach the stairs unscathed. He's in a dead sprint up the stairs and back into the room where he first encountered Sandman. Rod slows down for a second to look for clues that might help. Of course, the book is removed from the altar. The body lies motionless with a metal object plunged into the forehead. From the looks of the corpse, it was a young man in his early 20s. His body is covered in runes and letters the hunter has never seen before, but does seem eerily familiar. Rod touches the still warm body. His finger grazes one of the runes, smearing easily. All the runes were painted. He smells the mixture. It's the stench of bile and rotted blood. Rod pulls his fingers back abruptly. Rubbing his index finger and thumb together, he examines the consistency of the mixture. Blood mixed with ink, possibly? Judging from the past several hours, from arachnids to imps and thralls, the blood is almost certainly demon. Rod wipes his fingers off with the clothes of the corpse and heads to the opposite doorway. He's pushed through the doorway from the energy of Cerberus crashing into the room, hot on his scent. The left head snaps at Rod. Thick froth flies off the beast's tainted teeth. Rod pushes himself away from the doorway. Clawing back to his feet, he heads up the next set of stairs. Cerberus continues its pursuit, destroying the stairs in its path. He makes it to the next platform when the demon dog brings down the entire set of stairs. Rod looks below as they crash to the scorched ground. Cerberus leaps for him, just missing the platform with its massive teeth. The hunter, one finger, salutes the beast as it falls. He continues across the platform to the next set of steps. The hunter busts through the door at the last set of steps with guns drawn. He enters a small room with a single cot in the middle and many red candles laying around the room. The flames dancing off the wicks give the room a red hue. White runes written in chalk cover the area from floor to ceiling. A circle outlines the perimeter of the bed, with inscriptions written around it. Rod kneels over to investigate. Again, an odd feeling washes over him that he's seen these writings before. but for the life of him he cannot remember where. They seem so new, yet so familiar. Sandman has many answers. The hunter is just going to have to beat it out of him. Rod makes his way to the door on the opposite side of the room. He steadily pushes it open, with Damon Malum pointing forward. A dark hallway lies before him. Rod walks forward. At the end of the passage is another set of stairs leading to another door. He proceeds up and opens it. He's blinded by the light of dawn. Stopping for a moment, Rod places his forearm over his eyes. He does his best to mask himself from the bright blur. He rubs his eyes several times, trying to quicken the adjustment to the light. His eyes are able to see his surroundings. Rod heads down the steel stairs to his right. Turning left, the hunter moves along the rooftop. Looking out, he can see the ruined city. The sun's rays sliding past the skeletal buildings, the lush green vegetation winning the war against the man-made structures as they constrict the buildings like a snake against its prey. He makes it to the edge of the roof, finding Sandman standing next to a zipline. A leather satchel rests on his left hip, with the strap swung around his right shoulder. Rod pulls out his pistol and aims it at Sandman. "This ends here. Give me the book." Sandman stops and turns around. A stunned expression paints across his face. "I gotta say, color me impressed. I didn't expect you so soon." He takes a step forward. Rod cocks the hammer back, both hands gripping the handle. "First, you're going to throw the satchel to me. Then we're going to have a little chat. I'm not finished with my questions," the hunter shouts with his eyes locked on his prey. Sandman nods reluctantly, then pulls the satchel from his shoulder. He stops in mid-motion. His thin lips open up in a wicked grin. Rod can tell Sandman is looking over his shoulder. Thinking it's a ploy, the hunter keeps his gaze fixed on the occultist. "Looks like we're going to have to finish this chat some other time. You got company." Sandman turns back to the zipline, picking up a harness and wrapping it around his waist. Rod yells to stop, but is silenced by the blood-curdling roar from behind. He turns in time to see the three-headed demon climbing onto the roof. The beast was able to escape through the hole caused by the generator's explosion. "Come on! You gotta be kidding me!" Rod says, agitated. He turns back to Sandman just in time to see him flicking the bird to him. Jumping off the ledge, Sandman laughs as he zips across to the adjacent building's rooftop. "See ya, bitch." Rod eases back towards Cerberus. He sees the muscles tightening through the demonic hound's black hair. The beast is preparing to pounce. He doesn't have the energy at this point to face the beast head-on. Low on ammo and stuck on the roof of a 70-story building, Rod has very few options. His only choice is to ride the zipline. No other harness, unfortunately. Can't use his hands, they'll burn up from friction by the time he makes it to the other building. Rod looks to his 1911. Just maybe it will work. Cerberus sprints at Rod, who leaps to his right, missing the charge. Rod rolls twice, then stumbles back to his feet. The beast slows down and spins back in Rod's direction, now blocking the hunter from the zipline. Rod steps backward, keeping his gaze on the beast. He glances over his left shoulder at the enclosure leading back into the building. If he can lure the beast to another head-on charge, maybe the hellish cur will ram right into the building. This will knock it out, or at least daze it long enough to reach the zipline. Cerberus moves away from the ledge, all six eyes fixed on the fatigued hunter. The beast seems to be working on a plan of its own. The right head tilts its head skyward and lets out a howl. The middle head growls with anticipation of the next attack. Rod pulls out a slug from his pouch and loads it into his revolver. The .50 caliber bullet is silver-tipped, with tiny runes etched into it. Silver acts as poison to demons. The small runes are the icing on the cake, giving more potency to the silver. Unfortunately, he only has one, and he needs it to count, especially against a demon of this size. He's going to hit the demon's heart for maximum effectiveness. I need to lure the big bastard to me, Rod thinks. Come on, you ugly son of a bitch. I bet Herndir made you his bitch, Rod entices. The name sparks in Cerberus as it growls. Its back arches up as all three heads lower. Think that did the trick, Rod says, holding his position. Before Cerberus can attack, the building starts to shake. The delayed sound of an explosion travels to the roof. 3 more explosions sound off as the building shakes violently. Both Rod and Cerberus fight to keep balance while the building begins collapsing. Rod's plan literally crumbles from under his feet. The 4 support beams were blown apart from the first level. The weight of the building leans in the direction of the zip line. Several of the first levels collapse in on themselves. Massive chunks of the skyscraper spew out from all directions, creating massive debris clouds. The tower leans further with each second. This is Rod's only chance to take the zip line to the neighboring rooftop. It's now or never. He loosens his support from the building and slides to the zip line. Cerberus is dancing back and forth, trying to hold its balance. The left head spots Rod escaping in the direction of the zip line. It howls, then headbutts the middle head to grab its attention. Agitated and scared, the middle head snaps at the left. The left howls again. The middle targets the hunter, reaching the zip line. Rod slides to the ledge and pushes off. He pulls his pistol out and wraps it over the metal zip line. He grabs the handle with his right hand and the barrel with his left, speeding to the rooftop. Cerberus follows suit, charging off the cliff and leaping out into the air. He can see the ledge. His hands feel the heat from the friction of the gun and metal wire, but Rod endures the pain. A looming shadow appears over him. Looking back, Cerberus and the trail of the collapsing skyscraper are hot on his heels. The left head of the hellish beast snaps at the wire, severing it. Rod's line to the rooftop changes to a vertical plummet to the earth. Pieces of the falling skyscraper smash into the adjacent buildings, toppling chunks of walls. In a last-ditch effort, the hunter fires his grappling hook at the building's ledge. It lands securely, and Rod swings into one of the side windows. He is not fast enough, however. The falling tower smashes into the building, and the ancient construction gives way to the weight of the toppling debris. The wall and ceiling fall on top of the hunter. He does his best to slide and run through the crumbling rooms, but is soon overtaken. The chaos lasts mere minutes, but the toppling tower destroys 3 other buildings. The dust cloud balloons across a square mile, blotting out the sun. The city unnervingly goes quiet, save for the random droppings of fragments from standing walls. Rod opens his eyes to darkness, asking himself if he bit the eternal bullet. The darkness answers back.
This is quite the predicament you put us in.
Rod struggles to move. A piercing pain rushes through his body. His left shoulder is pinned in place. Something punctured his left hand and lower right abdomen. Rod pulls his left hand free, moaning in intense pain. He is able to stretch upward and move some debris so light can illuminate the current dilemma. The light breaks through a small hole from above, casting a glow on the trapped hunter. He assesses the damage. Steel rebar from one of the buildings made a happy home in his shoulder. It is bent 45 degrees, pinning him in place. Another piece of rusted shrapnel is protruding from his abdomen. He winces and lets out a painful chuckle.
Damn it. I hope I don't get an infection. If it weren't for this brat, we wouldn't be in this situation. And this is what family gets you.
I made a promise, and I intend to keep it.
Ah, a promise. Truly amazing what humans do to each other. What logic is in a promise. Nothing more than a way to control one another. Here you are, defying all logic to keep a promise. And the irony is, you're the one in the grave.
It proves one thing, though.
You don't control me, Rod professes, struggling to breathe. The blood loss is beginning to take its toll. The Dark One laughs at his comment. Rod, I never controlled you. I did nothing but try and protect you. Your reckless actions have put you here, not me. Don't shift this on me. The wounded hunter attempts to bend the rebar enough to slide his shoulder through, but the blood loss weakened him immensely. He stops and fishes into his pocket, pulling out his metal tin. Placing it on his stomach, Rod opens it to partake in his last cigarette. He gives a long sniff before putting it between his dry lips. The dark voice chuckles. You threw the lighter into the gasoline. Rod makes a long sigh and lays in pain-driven silence for a moment. Fuck. Throwing the cigarette into the black concrete grave. The only sound is his heavy breathing and the crumbling of debris. He begins to process the recent events while he is still conscious. So many questions, but where should he begin? The throbbing from his abdomen pushes out the flood of questions. Pain fills his every thought. Enough of this. I need to get out of here, he shouts out. Grabbing hold of the metal shrapnel, Rod yanks the rebar from his stomach. He cries out in agony as blood bubbles out. He applies pressure to the wound in hopes of slowing the blood. Now you're losing more blood? What were you thinking? Oh, right. You weren't. That building falling on your head must have given you a concussion. The Dark One with a laugh. I hate you, Rod replies. The vision starts to blur. It won't be long before he passes out. He musters up all the concentration he can, speaking back to the Dark One. I saw a wraith tonight. It wrapped itself around the Sandman. I saw it only for a second, but I knew what it was the moment I saw it. The Dark One remains silent. Are you the wraith? With all of his might, the hunter keeps his composure and consciousness, waiting for the Dark One's reply. He could not fight off the hazy feeling for much longer. His sight worsens, but he hangs on, desperately waiting for a response, anticipating the answer, not knowing what he will do if it is the answer he fears. No, I am not. A slight sigh of relief. However, it occurs to him that the voice may be lying. It speaks again, Rod hanging on to each word for dear life. There are forces at work that are much larger than you or me. Like the Sandman said, fate has a plan for us all. That includes me. You and I are in an unbalanced alliance, so to speak. We both want the same thing. And that is? Vengeance. This echoed deep in his mind. He doesn't understand the statement. Vengeance on who? The question sticks out like a sore thumb. He can think of only one instance, but the debt with the vampire Vinyark has already been paid. A life for a life. His eyes grow heavier. Too much blood loss. His hand slides off of the wound. All strength is leaving his body. Fate, again, can be a cruel mistress, as a large set of eyes peer out from the darkness. The familiar blood-red ovals from Cerberus stare brutishly at the suffering hunter. The rubble begins to shake loose as the rest of the head wrestles closer to Rod. It whimpers as the rubble slides off its head. The beast is just as wounded as Rod, but decides to make one last effort to finish the job. He can no longer fight the heaviness.
The hunter fades into the nothingness. The dark voice calling out dissolves to a high-pitched tone. The words are nothing more than vague sounds muddled through the throb of blackness. Cerberus closes in for the kill. Suddenly, and very violently, a bright light illuminates all around, scaring away all the shadows. A fantastical flash that quickly fades into darkness.